please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. Just double check, my mic's on. All right, thank you very much, Brandy. My name is Andy Hunthausen. This is the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Thursday, July 11th. Good morning. To my left, Commissioner Tom Rolfe. We'll let him deal with that. And to his left, Brandy Spangler is be taking care of us today. Good morning, Brandy. And to my right, Commissioner Candace Payne.
Good morning.
And we have two Deputy County Attorneys, Nico Hash and Keegan Shea. Good morning. And Roger Baltz, our Chief Administrative Officer. Good morning. There is a sign-in sheet in front as well as agendas. Please sign in prior to leaving today so we have a good record of who has attended our meeting. And we will start today with, we don't have any consent action items, but we'll start today with the resolution 2024-72, which is Lewis and Clark County Emergency Declaration. And we have Kyle Sturgill-Simon with us today. You'd introduce yourself and we'll start with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Kyle Sturgill-Simon, Emergency Manager for Lewis and Clark County. Just first off, a quick update on the Horse Gulch fire on the Canyon Ferry area. We are looking at about 2,000 acres currently with 0% containment. So far, retardant line has held where previous burns were, which has saved a considerable amount of time and effort and allowed firefighters to get in there. Direct attack has been mostly infeasible with fast spread of the fire and poor firefighting conditions.
Just so people understand what direct attack means, that means people on the ground with picks and shovels and Pulaskis.
Correct. So picks and shovels often are for digging line, which would be an indirect containment kind of approach. Direct attack would be the wet stuff on the red stuff, actively putting out the flames right up against, but the flame height has been too high to get too close. So they've been using more dozer line and backburn strategy, the indirect approach. Yeah, thanks.
Thank
you. There is a type 3 team that took over at 0600 this morning. So we just got the ops brief from them. Forest Service is in charge of this fire and we're in contact with them. One of their primary objectives is keeping fire off of private land. So they're working very hard on that. And before you is a resolution related to this. Whereas a wildland fire in the area of Canyon Ferry has threatened to damage a large number of private residences and public critical infrastructure within the county beginning on July 9th. And whereas protection of these facilities is essential to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of residents of the county, whereas a drier than usual June and near record-setting early July temperatures have resulted in unfavorable firefighting conditions. And whereas evacuations are necessary to ensure the safety of residences as well as the responding personnel traveling in the incident area. And whereas resources beyond the capacity of the county will be necessary to address this fire and to maintain fire protection for the rest of the county. Therefore, be it resolved by the County Commissioners that an emergency is hereby declared pursuant to Section 10.3.402 because extensive resources have been assigned to this incident to protect life and property in weather conditions that are expected to worsen.
Thank you very much. Couple of questions right off the bat. Maybe the other commissioners will have some questions. And we can talk more specifically about the fire too if people have questions about that. But in terms of the declaration of emergency, we do this, why? And how does it help us be prepared and have the resources necessary or potentially have those resources necessary to do the work that needs to be done?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the emergency declaration is a recognition of conditions in an incident that may expand outside of the capacity of the county to keep control of. And so we're recognizing that current weather conditions are bad enough that this fire may outpace the local capacity. We also have a lot of federal resources on the fire. If we need to ask for outside assistance from the state and whatnot, we need an emergency declaration in place to do so.
Right. So it's part of the process, normal process.
Yep.
In an emergency like this that
Correct.
that we would employ to make sure that we're working in partnership with our other governmental counterparts. That's great. Thank you very much for that. And then a little bit more about the fire. You said it's about 2,000 acres, and for those that they can see it, but you know, if you don't know directions and all of that, it's essentially kind of between the community of York and Canyon Ferry Lake area to the north and east of York.
Correct. Yeah. So northeast side of Canyon Ferry, it's burning just about outside of the Jimtown Road area toward Magpie Gulch. And the current evacuations in place are from Cave Gulch, which is on that northern end, down to the Broadwater County line. And I was just learned this morning that Broadwater County also has some evacuations in place.
Great, thank you. If folks wanted to keep themselves updated and informed about the fire, where would they find that information?
Yeah, so the Forest Service is putting out formal updates on the fire through their website and then also through InsaWeb, which is a online site where you can see the most current update. We're also sharing all of that information on all of our county social media and the website. And then also in relation to the evacuations, we're putting those updates on social media and the website as well.
So at a minimum, check the county website. You can find a way to find this information, or the Facebook page.
Yep, doing our best to make sure as much information can get out as quickly as possible and it's consistent with what the Forest Service is seeing.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioners, questions, comments for Mr.
If I might,
Please, Commissioner.
could you explain the fire, what is it, type 3 fire management that was brought up, and how it how those things are decided?
Yeah, absolutely. So incidents are typed from 5 to 1, with 5 being the smallest incident, usually something that you just handle in-house day to day. And then with 1 being a much larger scale, hurricanes, things along those lines. Teams are typed similarly because the number of resources that have to be managed for the incident require that much more oversight. So a type 3 team is one that is designed to manage a local incident with a lot of local and federal resources assigned to it over multiple operational periods. So you're looking at a couple of days at least. Type 2 is when you have to start asking for even more outside resources and you're really doing a lot of resource management, and it kind of goes from there. And good question on that too, because we currently have the type 3 team in place and they are ordering a type 2 team to come in, which should be Friday. And that's in recognition of the amount of resources and the impacts to the community that are going on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I would also like to recognize that this fire has unfortunately had a line of duty death on. That's been in the news, and it's something that we were all very sorry to hear about. The crews out there worked overnight, basically, from what I understand, and there's a lot of people coming in, and that's definitely something that's been weighing heavy on a lot of people out there.
Thank you for bringing that up. It is really important to recognize that. And this morning at Hometown Helena, the sheriff gave a little bit of an overview of the incident, and we had a moment of silence there for the fallen person, woman who was flying the aircraft, I think is my understanding. I don't know all the details, but that's best I understand from the news reports and all of that. So our thoughts and prayers are with her family, and hopefully you know, the information that comes out is accurate and all of that. I hate for kind of talking about trying to inform the family and all of that. Her name has not been released, I don't think. And
Right. Yeah, we're holding off on putting any information out until family's been notified.
right. So hopefully the rest of the operation is safe and safely. Anything else, commissioners, that you'd like to? Okay. Thank you. Really appreciate your comments today, and you're helping us understand presenting the emergency declaration. How about public comment on this this item? Any public comment? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve resolution 2024-72?
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve resolution 2024-72, Lewis and Clark County Emergency Declaration as explained by Mr. Sturgill-Simon.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the emergency declaration resolution as presented. Further discussion, commissioners?
Seems to make sense that we, as this thing is kind of blown up, we've got to be ahead of it. So.
Agreed. And thank you for bringing it forward as well. And thank you to all the folks that are working on this incident right now and that will be in the future. And just kind of recognizing our role. This is part of our role in this incident. And the rest of it is basically saying, what do you need? And how can I stay out of your way so you can do your job? So I recognize that as one of our main roles, letting people do their work. So thank you very much. All right, commissioners. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Okay. Appreciate it. I'm gonna sign it right now. Ready to go. Okay. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a bid opening for the Murray Building roof replacement. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. For the record, Dan Karlin, County Engineer. Today, we have received and are opening bids for the Murray Roof Replacement Project. Appears I have two bids to open. The first one is from Summit Roofing Incorporated of Missoula, Montana. Try the other side. All right. There is a bid bond enclosed. The bid form appears to be complete and the acknowledgement page appears to be complete. All right, so their bid is for a total sum of $182,505 and no cents. The second bid is from Metalworks of Montana Incorporated, also of Missoula, Montana. And it is in a separate sealed envelope on the inside. Appropriately marked. There is a bid bond included. The certification sheet appears to be complete. And the bid form appears to be complete. They have submitted a bid for a total of $274,912. And staff would like to take these under advisement, do a review, go through them in more detail, and come back to the commission on July 25th for a recommendation for award.
July 25th. Okay, commissioners, any questions for Mr. Karlin?
I have a question. I didn't catch the name of the first entity that bid.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Payne. The Bid was from Summit Roofing Incorporated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, prior to motion, commissioners will ask for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none. They've asked to take the bids under advisement and come back to us on the 25th, commissioners. So the motion to that regard would be great.
Chairman Hunthausen, I move that we approve the recommendation to postpone this until they've had a chance to review it more closely, and they'll come back to us on the 25th, as presented by Mr. Karlin.
Second.
Moved and seconded to take the bids under advisement, come back to us on the 25th. Their regular scheduled meeting for a recommendation. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Karlin. All right, next item on the agenda is a bid award for the lower D2 ditch flood mitigation project. Precast materials, Mr. Karlin.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, again, Dan Karlin for the record, County Engineer. On June 18th of 2024, one bid was opened for the lower D2 ditch flood mitigation precast materials supply. A separate bidding process will take place for a contractor to install. The bid requested prices for all 8 culverts that are planned to be replaced. However, the cost for installation is estimated to be slightly less than the cost of the supply of the culverts. Because the project has a finite budget, we have elected to recommend the award of 5 of the 8 culverts. Discussions with the landowner for crossing C determined that it could be removed and not replaced. The Glass Drive 1 and 2 culverts are the furthest upstream and will be replaced at a later date. Funding for this project is a combination of a $750,000 American Rescue Plan Act grant, with the remainder coming from the Flood Mitigation RID. Staff recommends awarding the supply of bid items 3 through 6 and 8 to the low bidder, Rinker Materials of Helena, Montana, for a sum of $550,652.74, and authorize the chair to sign all applicable purchase documents. And I
Thank
can
you,
answer
Mr.
questions you may have.
Questions, Commissioner? Okay, I'll have just a couple. For those that might be watching today that don't have a full understanding of the project, a little bit about the project, where this is, and timelines, and when we might get going. Best guess on all of that.
All right, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'll try to be as brief as possible. So this is actually a combination of 2 projects for this. So previously, we had begun and designed what's called the Arrowhead Road culvert replacement. That project is funded entirely through the RID program. That one is the largest of this string of culverts. So that's one of the same funding sources, but a separate funding of that project. Okay. So then we have the remaining culverts, which are on the D2 as well, which are funded by that ARPA grant, as well as the match for that grant, which comes from that same RID source. Okay, so that's the funding. That's the 2 projects. They are located on the D2 drain ditch. The D2 drain ditch is it's really the low point in the valley. It's a combination of Silver Creek as well as the D2 drain, which is managed by the Helena Valley Irrigation District by mandate of the Bureau of Reclamation. All of this infrastructure was installed in the 50s. Over time, culverts were added to it for crossings for ranchers to get from one side of their field to the other across this ditch. The function of a drain, for those that don't know, is to collect water from subdrain systems. Tile systems is what they're referred to subdrain the ground to make it more irrigable, really. It drains that water out so plants have the opportunity to breathe and grow. Once they've done that, then they can now be surface irrigated through sprinkling or flood irrigating or whatever, and it allows that to drain it. So it doesn't drown the plants. That's kind of that. So this is one project of a much larger program, flood mitigation program. This is I'll call it phase 2. Phase 1 would have been the Trap Club project, which was Sierra Road, North Montana, a little bit of Forest Vale Road, and then of course the Trap Club property itself. This is now the downstream portion that we need to complete before we can progress through the rest of the program, which includes expanding capacity on either Sierra Road or continuing north to tie into this D2 canal sooner, as well as a project on Forestvale Road to bring a decent amount of floodwater down that road to tie into what's already been completed. And then finally working down or south on McHugh Road to tie into where all of this floodwaters tend to spill to. So it's going to be a long process, a long haul, but this is another step on the ladder getting to completion. So working through it.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, and this work is being done essentially on the east side of the interstate on the D2 ditch.
Correct. Yep. I
Right.
forgot to mention that. It is on the
Yep.
east side of the interstate. As you drive, if you drive the interstate frequently between here and Lincoln Road, you'll feel yourself kind of drop down, or maybe you will now that I've mentioned it. You'll decrease in elevation and then you'll start to come back up. If you look to your right immediately at that point, you'll see a canal that heads northeast and it's going directly toward Lake Helena. And that is where this work is taking place.
Thank you for the description. Any questions, Commissioner?
Of course, I have
Commissioner?
a question. Dan, when you talk about this being a flood mitigation project, I'm thinking we may have folks out in TV land wondering what kind of flood we're talking about. This is, I mean, everybody is trying to put water on top through their irrigation systems. And now this is, and I was at your office when I first started this. I had no idea that there was this problem with excess water in the valley. And so could you go back through the history a little of this?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Payne. So story starts in about the 50s when Canyon Ferry Dam was replaced. They replaced the original dam with the very large concrete structure that's there now. When they did that, they had to flood a much larger area. When they flooded that area, they had to displace a lot of landowners. Well, when those landowners were displaced, they were land swapped with the federal government to property in the Helena Valley. When they moved into that property as a condition of that, a lot of it was very swampy, obviously had a lot of high groundwater. So in order to do that, the Bureau of Reclamation installed a series of drains, as well as all the tile that drains that ground into those drains. D2 is only one of, I believe, 4 drain canals that are in the valley. As you drive around the valley, you'll notice there's also a very large canal that carries a lot of water. That's the irrigation water that comes directly from Canyon Ferry Dam. It is pumped through centrifugal pumps up the canyon and into the Helena Regulating Reservoir, where it then begins its journey through a gravity-fed system and finally ends its journey at Lake Helena. It comes in, I want to say it's about half a mile west of the causeway. And at that point, I would say it approaches 1,000 CFS that flows in that canal at any given time. And by the time it hits Lake Helena, it's down to a couple. I mean, they've worked it out very well to where they know exactly how much they're delivering, when they're delivering it. They're not wasting a lot of water. So that's the irrigation piece of that. As far as the flood mitigation element, that goes back a long ways too. So the major flood that we talk of, what we call the flood of record, happened in 1981. It's what's referred to as a 500-year event. Doesn't mean it happens only every 500 years. It could happen 5 years in a row. But statistically, it is a 0.02% chance of that event happening annually. So that the inverse of that is 500. We have designed this flood mitigation work for the 25-year event, or a 4% annual chance of occurrence. For those that have lived in the last 30 or 40 years in the Helena Valley, we've had several of those, more than 4. 2011, 2018, and 2019 actually come to mind for events where we reached that threshold for a volume of water at any given time flowing through 10 Mile Creek. The 2011 flood is what finally kickstarted this program to get us to really build some infrastructure to handle those floods. So the reason we selected that 4% annual chance is what I'll try to refer to it as, is it tends to happen a little more frequently. The 100-year flood is what our flood manager, Warby McNamee, regulates to, because those are a little more devastating. There's more water, they come a little higher, and they cause more damage. The 25-year flood is more frequent, but it tends to be lower volumes. They tend to come and go a little quicker, except in 2018, that one lasted a long time. And they tend to do less damage, but they certainly do damage, and they cause a lot of mayhem. So being able to manage that flood when those come through, once this infrastructure is installed, should be a non-issue, a non-event for the residents of the valley. 100-year flood, they'll notice for sure. We'll all notice it. We'll have Kyle up here probably making his declaration again for that event. But when we get this done, the 25-year event should be kind of a ho-hum for most of the residents. Hopefully that answered your question.
I have one additional, and it'll sound silly because you know this so well. Tile. When I think of tile, I think what's on my bathroom floor. I don't think that's probably what you're talking about for this project. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Payne, you are 100% correct. So a little personal story. My wife is from Minnesota, and they install tile, they call it, in a lot of their fields so their corn doesn't wither and die from excess water. In fact, the town that she is from, they have a tile plant. Now, back in whenever, it actually was tile. It was clay pipe, and they would install that. It was perforated, a lot of effort, and they would lay that in trenches. It would allow the ground to subdrain, and same system, same idea. However, modern technology and our ability to mass produce high density polyethylene, or HDPE pipe, made that process much more simple. They're able to plow it in as opposed to dig it and lay it, and it doesn't crack and fracture like clay tile does. So tile, that's why they call it tile. I was kind of baffled when she said we're driving by the tile plant, and I saw a lot of HDPE pipe laying there, but that's what they still call it. It's just a relic of a bygone system.
Okay, thank you, Dan. That really helps me.
Good. Glad I could help.
Commissioner Rolfe.
I know you've been working on this project for some time and met with a great deal of success. Let's talk a little bit about how time-wise, how much we're delaying this by just doing the 5 and the removal of 1 and leaving 2 of them. How far is that going to put us back?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Rolfe. So we'd like to do them all right now. We're delaying only as long as we have to. So the RID brings in approximately $156,000 annually. That the resolution on that allows us to use it for grant match dollars and also for smaller projects. As I alluded to earlier, we're using it to replace the Arrowhead project or Arrowhead culvert entirely. That one was a little more expensive due to kind of the market conditions we've been dealing with for the last 3 years or so. But that's the game plan as of now, unless I can find another grant that we can apply for to fund the remainder of that. So we will proceed, depending on these bids too. We've had a conversation with the supplier here that if our bids from the construction contract come in more favorably, they'd be willing to add the glass drive to glass drive 1 pipe if we can afford them. Hopefully we can get to that point, but we need to bid that out, which should be coming soon. We're really closing in closely on the finalizing those plans for the installation contract. We're going to get that bid as soon as possible, still hopefully this month. That'll hit the paper, and we'll be able to get our number and then really get finalized on which direction we're going. So hopefully, if you looked at the bids, each one of these pipes is around $75,000. So doubling that, you're looking at about $150,000 to install one of these pipes, specifically the glass drive 2 and the glass drive 1 pipes, working our way upstream. So a year or so, we'd be able to do one of them, and then another year we'd be able to do the next one. that would put our account in a pretty low spot, but we have great help with Audra Zackrell, keeping me from going too close to the limit there. And we'll get them done as soon as we have the funding to do so. One
Thank
way or
you.
the other.
Thank you. Well, I just want to comment that I really appreciate your diligence on this. You've done some great work for us over the last several years before I even got here, and I think your focus on getting this done is really important, and I want to be as supportive as possible. So, thank you.
I'm not done with you. I thought of another question. As our valley is getting to be more, it's subdivided. It's not, we're not growing hay and wheat and using it as irrigated farmland so much. And in the future, I can see that's going to continue to happen. How will, so first question, the RID that you mentioned that pays for this. This is a rural improvement district. Who is it? The benefiting farmers and ranchers? Who's members of this RID?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Payne, that's a good question. So there are, I don't remember the details of this because it was many years ago when this was established, but there's 4 categories that were brought into the boundary of this RID. I can say, I think this is accurate. Jessica's not here to correct me, but because the boundary exists, if a parcel is divided within that boundary, we would now have 1 additional parcel contributing. So say there's one parcel that's 50 acres and they divide it into 5, we would gain 4 properties contributing to the RID. So the boundary was defined as 100-year floodplain as a piece of it, and then roads impacted by it. So if a flood water crosses over North Montana and that road is impacted, the adjacent properties are considered a benefiting property. One thing that's always come up on this is not one single penny of the RID fund can be spent outside of that boundary, and that is absolutely the case. This D2 area there's definitely fewer properties out there. However, they do contribute, and it is also a very critical element of the overall plan. So that's the downstream part. I go down another real quick rabbit hole. One thing I always like to explain is the funnel analogy. Is right now we have a funnel. It's a small funnel that goes into, like, say, a pop bottle. It has a very narrow throat. We're trying to make this more of a canning funnel so we can allow that water to flow out more efficiently to where it's already going, so we have fewer impacted properties.
Good to know.
So just to clarify, this is not really an irrigation problem. This is to impact every homeowner out there that could be having a flood issue. So that is very helpful, Dan. Thank you. I changed my perspective on how this works.
Yes, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Payne. Yes, absolutely. So it's a very complex system with a lot of moving parts and a lot of stakeholders. The Bureau of Reclamation, we're in constant contact with them because this is in reality their facility. It's managed by the HVID, but it is the Bureau's facility. So we need their concurrence and thumbs up before we can do any of this stuff.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, and just a couple comments. I think it's about 1,600 properties that are included in the special district. And yeah, Commissioner, I think that conclusion is good because it really doesn't have that much to do with irrigation. It's when we have a flood, and we're talking about a 25-year flood, this definition of we've discovered, and it's pretty obvious, and the M&M study, which you can tell us what that means again. What are the terms? M&M. The
H&H.
H&H study. I was close. It's in the alphabet, right? H&H study, the hydraulic and
Hydrology.
hydrology. See, that's close. M&M. I ate some M&Ms last night. So the H&H study and just observing when we have a flood, all the water goes to the low spot in the valley. The low spot in the valley ends up being this D2 ditch. The D2 ditch, then, though it is the drain, that's not the main issue that we're talking about. We're talking about the flood water all goes there. So we first had to get permission to join in with the Bureau so that we could say, yes, we're recognizing the water goes there now. Will you allow us to improve the infrastructure along your corridor of your drain, your ditch, so that we can help the flood water pass more easily and more safely. So we know that water's coming. We know the 25-year flood comes, and we had opportunity to do the Sierra and Trap Club and Rossiter School area project first, but after that, we recognize we really need to work from the bottom up. And if we're going to start improving infrastructure way up here, we have a flood and it still goes down there and all of that stuff's not improved, it's going to continue to cause problems. So we decided to work from the lowest point up, which is these folks that are in the district on the east side of the interstate along the ditch. So improving those crossings first. And we might talk about that a little bit. Why are we already have crossings there and we have culverts there. What are we doing? Why are we changing them out? It's a capacity issue. You want to just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So the D2, the actual canal itself has really adequate capacity for definitely this 25-year and some excess on top of that. However, just like the funnel, there are several culverts that are in there for field crossings or the Arrowhead Road that extends down to access property for residents. They're a lot smaller. So what we're proposing to put in is, I believe it's a 6x12 box culvert on most of these. The Arrowhead Road one is much larger than that, yet it's 20x6, I believe. They're going to be inset, so it will allow the stream channel to flow naturally through there and infill with silt and gravels and things of that nature. Natural substrate is what we call that. But what's presently there in several locations is a 36-inch culvert. So if you remember your math classes from high school, pi r squared, it's not really that big on a 36-inch pipe. And if you are able to expand that significantly, you gain a lot of capacity. So for reference, the work we did on Sierra Road, that's 450 cubic feet per second capacity without any spillage. So definitely a decent amount of water. The D2 drain has over 600 in capacity. So we have, like I said, some excess above what we would anticipate moving that direction. So
thank you. Yeah, so it's a capacity issue and going backwards upstream, downstream to upstream, improving the capacity all along. Since the 2011 instigation of this whole process, and now we have even a second iteration or an expanded iteration of the flood mitigation plan within this district. It represents projects that could equal millions of dollars or do equal millions of dollars. So we're kind of, like you said, chipping away at it and doing what we can, starting at the bottom now and working our way backwards and improving the infrastructure all the way along to the upper edge of the district, which is essentially where the water comes out of 10 Mile between Green Meadow Drive-ish area. So this is good education. I think neither one of the commissioners were here when all this started, so it's great to kind of get this, and the questions are great. I think when we passed the special district out, the flood district out there, there was approximately 1,600, and I think it's $100 a year per property. And so if you're right, look across, but if you're right, if we have large subdivisions out there in the area, that those added lots would probably be added on, and it would expand the district in terms of numbers of properties participating. That's my hope as well. I think that's the case. Not sure if I'm looking over here to our legal folks, but I'm assuming that's the way it works. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, yep. So for within an RID, when you have a subdivision of property within those boundaries, those properties then get picked up for that annual maintenance because they're still benefiting properties within the boundaries of
Right.
that district. So
So the assumption is correct, but thanks for the explanation, a little bit of history lesson, and commissioners, you can see parts and pieces that have been done out there. Another piece of the project that's been done already is along Forest Vale Cemetery there. Just that very short section of ditch has been improved because we're partners in ownership of the county or ownership of the property, I guess, in terms of the cemetery district and all of that, and had opportunity to do that work early on. So that section's been done, but eventually there'll be a lot of pieces that come together and add up to a larger system that will help pass this. The goal is to pass the water through the valley more efficiently and with less damage to property and potentially to lives. But, and I just want to say this, that we're talking about a 25-year flood. So there are going to be floods that are larger than that are going to impact people. And this is not, this would, like the 1981 flood, this would not, it would overwhelm anything that we're talking about here. That flood overwhelmed the entire valley, including the East Valley as well, with Prickly Pear and all of that. So those kinds of floods are, but the more typical flood, we want to try and make some difference there. So that's the goal. Any other thoughts, questions, comments for Mr. Karlin?
I don't have any more questions for Mr. Karlin, but I do have a general statement. This is along the lines of we cannot prevent it entirely, but we take action to at least slow it down a little. And I'm thinking the action we've taken in preparing our forests for fires by going in and I was looking for, we had a presentation by the people from the Tri-County Fire several days ago, but that's what we're doing. We're trying to get ready. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. We're trying to get ready. We know it's only a matter of time before we have an emergency. So we have to do what we can. And an emergency with a fire or an emergency with flooding, that's what the government is supposed to be doing. We're trying to help our constituents deal with the next, we don't know when it's going to happen, but we're pretty sure it's going to happen. So I think we have to do this.
Yes, thank you. Anything else? All right, and appreciate all of the information and all of the questions. It's great. And back to what we're after here. This is actually a bid award for the lower D2 ditch flood mitigation project. And it is for the precast materials as described by Mr. Karlin. So commissioners, any other questions about that? How about public comment on this item? Any public comment on this item or bid award? Commissioners, is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I would move to accept, to award the bid of items 3 through 6 and 8 to the low bidder, Rinker Materials of Helena, for a sum of $550,652.74, and authorize the chair to sign all applicable purchase documents.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the bid award as presented. Further discussion, commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Karlin. Appreciate your work. All right. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you so much. All right. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for the Lewis and Clark County's preliminary budget for fiscal year 2025. And I'm sure Mr. Cornwell will give us the history here, but this is our second hearing on the budget. Thank you very much. Brandy, are our screens on? They are. They must. They're just dark right now. No. catch up our technology here and we'll be on the road. Aha, there it is.
Morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your patience on the technology. I was locked out of the computer. For the record, my name is Frank Cornwell and I am the county's Chief Financial Officer. And I will be presenting you the budget for fiscal year 2025 today. We already had a hearing 2 weeks ago to go over the budget, so this hearing should be much quicker. Note that a week from today, on July 18th, there will be a final adoption of the resolution for the budget. So this budget is a result of all the departments putting all their good work into it and using the commission's goals. We always show this. This is really important stuff. We have to be reminded every year, what are we trying to do? And we really focus on the goals, and the departments do a really good job of accomplishing these year in and year out. I've always liked number 2 and number 3 with the long range planning and the effective and efficient use of public resources. As you can see, as we've gone through all the budgets, you've seen that each of the departments take that very seriously. This slide here is showing the overall expenditures for the county at $126.7 million, which is a 0.08% decrease from the prior year. Mentioned this last time that it's pretty much due to spending down of ARPA and funds that one-time funds that are going to go away. So we're going to have a decrease this year. Maybe we'll have an overall decrease next year. We'll see, but it should flatten out for this year and next year overall as we spend those monies down, and then we'll have a normal increase. Overall revenues went up to $100.1 or $101 million, 0.2, I guess. That is a 4.2% increase, not a really significant increase year over year for the revenues. The overall decrease in county reserves are expected to go down by $25.5 million. I have a slide later that will describe what that all entails. Again, it's mostly projects that just kind of roll into one year to the next. So ARPA and maintenance districts projects, basically. So nothing to worry about there. It's very typical. So we'll hone in on the all-purpose fund or the general fund for the county. The overall expenses for the all-purpose fund are at $19.4 million, which is an 8.4% increase over the year. That increase is, there's a few factors that go into that increase: the COLA, the cost of implementing the new motor vehicle division software. That is something that we baked into the all-purpose fund budget. We've also worked in the busy election year, a lot of new costs that come with that, a lot of additional resources that go into the election year. One thing I didn't mention last time, but I just wanted to remind you that there has been a significant rise in costs for mental health evaluations at the detention center. So that is doubled and close to tripling. So that was something that we pay out through the general fund, and it's something that has definitely affected the all-purpose fund budget. So wanted to point that out. That's actually one of the bigger reasons why this has gone up. So the all-purpose fund revenue here is expected to be at $16 million. That is a 6.4% increase. Nothing too big of a change year over year. We'll have our typical increase on our mill levies, averaging out to be about 4.2% overall. That's the majority of the increase. We've also seen significant increases in interest income to the county. That has really stabilized the last year or so, and is something that I feel comfortable budgeting for into the future. I doubt that those interests income is really going to really drop down below what we've received recently. So we also budget very, very conservatively. So whatever we receive this year, we usually budget about half for next year, just in case there is a drastic decrease in that income. So we are safe there. So pointing out for personnel costs, there is a 3.5% matrix adjustment, or a cost of living adjustment to the entire county. That increase has been included in overall expenses. There's also step increases that anybody that sticks around and has a step increase that has been budgeted in as well. Also there was a $25 increase in health insurance premium. And more on personnel here. Wanted you to know that the total FTE for the county is going up from 395.95 to 397.7. That's not on the slide. I just wanted to point that out to you, just in case you guys were curious about that. That is due to a 1.75% or 1.75 increase in FTE. Mainly due to the commission has approved a new FTE at the county attorney's office for as a victim assistance coordinator. Also, they increased the district court to have a full-time assistant for the standing master. And we've gone over that. This will be the third time, so you guys are well aware, but those are the two big ones that we are having year over year. Again, not a significant increase, kind of status quo with our staffing levels. So for fiscal year 2025, this budget does retain all current services and programs. Our initiatives going forward have really kind of stabilized to be focused on mental health and diversion services. We continue to talk about the liability and health insurance funds. We have a lot of work to do, looking for cost savings, potential new revenues. More to come on that. You guys will be heavily involved in where we're going with those two funds. As you can see with the transfers into our CIP programs, that is just showing that our capital project prioritization is always in the forefront for our departments. There's no hesitation there. They understand we invest for the future and long-term planning with those CIP programs. And in building and security and storage, that's something you see within those operating budgets. So so our capital improvement funds are budgeted to transfer $3.9 million and budgeted to spend $7.7 million, which will leave around $15 million for the capital improvement funds, just our general capital improvement fund. We have two other capital funds. We have a RID fund, which is projected to spend $400,000. And then the big road and bridge project fund is expected to spend $8 million next year. And those all come out of capital improvement funds. So those funds are there to be spent. On this slide, we're talking about our reserves. We have countywide reserves are estimated to be around 40% at the end of fiscal year 2025, which is great. That total amount is roughly going to be around $51.9 million at the end of the year. And that's a really good, healthy reserve to have. For countywide operational reserves, they're estimated to be around 32.7% or $36.1 million. The all-purpose fund operating reserves is estimated to be at 25% or $4.9 million. And just as a reminder, our goal is to hit at least 25% on our reserves. As you can see, overall, this is a high level. These aren't individual departments. We're hitting those marks, and it's a good sign that our county is really healthy from a reserve standpoint. Our favorite example of revenue is the increase in the mill levy for the all-purpose fund. We're expecting it to go up $1.4 million at a 4.22%, which is made up of a estimated growth amount of $599,800, which is a growth percentage of 2.5%. Inflationary growth is has already been calculated to be at 2.8%, which is the 3-year average, or half the 3-year average of the consumer price index, or inflation. That's at $884,000. Due to new legislation from last year, we now have to include this $100,000, $300,000, $600,000 example showing estimated property increases that the county will have on a homeowner. That would mean $5.70 on a $100,000 home, $17.09 on a $300,000 home, $34.18 on a $600,000 home. I think Commissioner Rolfe was wondering kind of overall, what would that mean from a total standpoint? That's for a $100,000 home that a county would be taxing them at $264. A $300,000 home would be taxed at $792. A $600,000 home would be at $1,600. That is about 22% of the total tax bill. If you kind of think of a general home is going to pay $4,000 to $5,000, a typical kind of average home in the valley, we're about $1,000 of that or lower.
Thank you. That's a good point. About 20 to 25% of their tax bill is a result of the county general tax.
And that can change too. So it's a moving, yep, it's a moving target. Recent history has gone down. The county's portion actually has gone down as a percentage of the overall taxes that a homeowner receives. As I promised before, that I would like to describe kind of the decrease in reserves of the $25.5 million. We have $750,000 to spend in the open space projects that will probably be spent in 2025. Maintenance districts are expected to spend $5.6 million. Capital reserves are spending down $5 million. ARPA is budgeted to spend $5.8 million, and the remaining operating cash is what makes up the remaining amount of $7 million. So reserves are healthy. We're able to absorb these one-time costs, these capital projects. It's very typical to see these roll. We plan for these capital projects, but we know they're not all going to get done. And so a lot of it gets rolled to the next year and the next year. So it's a very typical seasonality of these projects. So nothing to worry about. This is a very typical, very good looking budget. Something to be very proud of. The departments have worked really, really hard. They continue to work really, really hard and ask me questions about next year and then the year after. It's a joy to work with everyone and my staff and the commission. Very proud of the work and where we're going with things.
Frank, Mr. Cornwell, I'm really glad you brought that up, the last comment about the departments and offices working really hard on these budgets, and then looking forward as well, because it's a point I'd like to make, and for those that might be watching today, that we not only look at the budget in terms of this year and paying for what we expect our costs to be this year or the services we want to provide this year, but we're looking at, can this budget be sustained over the long term? We're looking at 2-3 years and saying, if you continue on this path, Department X or Office Y, can you sustain this budget and this amount of staff or this amount of services? And is that workable going forward? And just speak to that a little bit. I'm really proud of the departments as well and the offices, because we really try to take into account that responsibility going forward, not just, hey, how do we get through this year? So.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. What I think about, the example I think about is we like to make sure that most things don't have a tail. So when we invest into something, we make sure if it does have a tail, it is something that we can absorb and sustain into the future. And an example is the mech RV or the command vehicle for the sheriff's office. It's a big $1 million investment for the county. We have to budget for maintenance. We have to budget for the training and all of the extras that come with that. And when we don't just get that, there's a tail is associated with it. So you have to analyze all that going forward. And thankfully we did. And I've talked with the sheriff multiple times. I've talked with their finance staff. How are you going to be able to manage this going forward? There is a maintenance agreement that we have budgeted into this budget, and we'll have budgets including it into the future that will guarantee that this command vehicle is up and running year in and year out as far as we can go. That is something that we have to think about on everything that we spend money on. Is this going to cause additional expenses going into the future? And that is the battle I have every day. And anybody comes in, they have an idea to spend money on. Okay, great. But is this going to cause issues into the future? We might have the money now, but will we have money later in order to sustain whatever initiative or project that you have in mind? So, and without hesitation, all departments understand that challenge. They don't push it. They don't disagree with our approach, and it is something that has been baked into the county, and I can sense it. Nancy worked it in. Roger, everybody has made sure that this is the temperament that we have going forward, and there's never a pushback. We always are very, very diligent on every penny that we spend, and especially the big ones.
That's a good example, and not investing in something that we can't sustain. That's great. And then the other piece to this that is, and Commissioner Rolfe will probably bring this up, but I'm really proud of, is the way that we plan for the future, and that those large expenditures that we know are coming. We know that we're going to, for example, have to replace our snow plows, or we know we're going to have to replace the equipment at the landfill or wherever it might be, the roof on the detention center. So we're saving for all those things on on an annual basis, and you see them in our budget as these reserves or surplus or whatever you want to call it, but they're for a specific purpose. A lot of it's for a specific purpose. And we know that these large hundreds of thousands, sometimes $1 million investments are coming. So we want to save for them now so that we don't drop those large expenditures on the taxpayers the year that we need them, for example. And it's a real thoughtful way to do it. And it's a lot like many of us run our own homes. We save for the next car, or we save for the next set of tires, or we know that we're going to have these expenses coming to replace our roof someday. So we got to put some money aside in reserve. So I'm really proud of that. You can speak to that if you want, but I don't hope I didn't steal your thunder,
No.
Commissioner, because I know you like to mention that and how proud we are of our CIP program, our capital improvement plan program. So.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. The departments have taken a very active role in their CIP programs. They come to me every year. We go over their CIP programs, and last year when I was here, they were still kind of getting an understanding, and I think they all typically really understand what the program is and what it's trying to accomplish. But this year I really saw a difference where they were asking, what can I put on there? What can I save for going into the future? Is this an appropriate expense that I can save for? I know it's coming. It's not something that I'm gonna need to spend on right now, but I see it coming. Is it okay to put on those plans? And so I've seen a lot of those. I fielded a lot of those questions, and I think that that is a good sign that everybody's starting to think long range, or always has, not starting to think. They've always thought about these long range plans and utilizing the CIPs to accomplish things going into the future, so we don't get caught off guard and have an incident and not have the monies to be able to manage it. And I think that it speaks to the culture of the departments and how they perceive their budgets going, especially from a long-term perspective.
Thanks. Commissioners, thoughts, questions, comments? Please, Commissioner Rolfe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to just go through a couple of questions I've got as we went through there that I think we just need to kind of delve into a little bit. On page 4, revenue by classification, could you talk a little bit more in detail about intergovernmental revenues, the 17 million plus figure there?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, the intergovernmental revenues is made up of I would say, I think it's all state and federal grants. So that's grant money coming into the county. It is a big portion of our income, our revenue to the county, but it's fairly volatile. It can go up and down based on the activity that the departments have with those granting agencies. So some years it can be really, really high, and during COVID, when you had ARPA and those types of funds, that was a really high year of intergovernmental revenues. I would imagine things are probably going to cool off the next couple of years on that. But I will say one thing: it is very impressive to see how hard the departments work at obtaining as much grant revenue as they can. We have a great grants department with Ann McCauley, and she works with all the departments to help them with these opportunities to get these additional services to the county. And I truly believe that number is as high as we can possibly get it. So, and to be able to achieve the services that we want to achieve.
Follow up, if I might. So things like the payment in lieu of taxes we get from the feds, the PILT money, I think we just got that in. It was 3.1 or 2 million.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yes, it was $3.2 million. Yep.
Okay.
From the feds, and it's been so because it comes in so late, we ended up adjusting your budget due to that. But yes, yeah, that just came in.
And then the money, the ARPA money that came in, the CARES money that had come in, when we use that, that's where it comes from.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, yes, so in prior years, you would have seen that revenue come in, and now you're seeing it in the expense line because it's spending out. But yes, you would have seen, that's why I'm saying year over year, you should expect it to kind of go down. But yes, that's where that revenue came in. It came in right into that line.
And then again, on the bottom item on that same page is other, and it counts for 23% of what your of what our revenue sources are. Could you give us a little more explanation of the other area?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, absolutely. This was actually a question Commissioner Payne had last year. So I included it in my notes. Uh, just anticipating the same question, because it is under other, and other can be ambiguous. So $5.9 million of that 23 million is maintenance and assessment. So that's a significant portion. Building $2.1 million is buildings and rent. $11 million is interfund transfers coming from CARES and health fund transfers. So that's transfers within ourselves. That's flowing through other. And $12 million is internal services. So the ITNS is a massive portion of that. So it is a big number, but those are very much internal type of flows there, but we have to include it in as our budget.
Okay. Maybe an example of that internal, the maintenance is the one department pays another department for doing it. Is that kind of where we're at?
So yeah, so for ITNS, for example, or IT costs, we have a internal service fund for or a department that is wholly funded through our internal rates. So and that rate structure is based on FTE and number of devices that we all have, and we've gone over that through our IT board discussions. And so each one of us gets charged a fee for that. For example, you would as well. And so our department, your commissions department, will get charged, say, $100 for, I know it's a lot more than that for a commissioner. So that would be transferred from this fund from the commission's budget to the ITNS budget. And that's that flow. So then they can operate and be able to manage our IT cost.
I think that's one of the beauties of what you do, that we don't just have an IT department and there's the expense. We kind of break it up by which department's using IT the most. And so that we know where that expense is, where those monies are needed. So I think it makes each department responsible for its overhead, so to speak.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, absolutely. We have James Thomas has done an excellent job with that department. And when I first came on, we really were trying under a challenge to kind of understand the fee structure. And now that we have a good understanding, we understand it really is based on the costs. So what does it cost to buy a server or buy a computer? That's what's driving it. It's no more than that, other than I guess the personnel costs. But it is heavily scrutinized and heavily managed by a really good staff there. And trust me, the departments really do a good job, and they really focus on IT costs. It is something that we have many discussions on, and they really are very aggressive with managing those costs.
And I think that's something I really appreciate about the way you're handling that. I do. If I could go, I've got a couple more questions.
Continue along.
Okay.
As long as you-
On page 10, you've got a $7.7 million capital expense number there. Could you give just a little breakout for the public on that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, absolutely. So the understanding of that one, that is the overall capital fund expected expense across the county for every single department. So a very typical, so there's usually two items that I see very commonly on these CIP plans. So there'll be printers, scanners, copiers, those types of things, and cars and vehicles. Those are the big ticket items, or the items that we see across the board in most of the departments. Now, some of the departments have much bigger expenses, like public works with the roads and bridges. So they put on big, large numbers, like a grader or a tractor, something that is going to dwarf other departments. So it's an amalgamation of all of those departments into one big pot as to what we're expected to expend. But you know, there is a pretty big range between like the commission's budget. You know, we don't typically spend much out of the commission's budget for CIP on a year-to-year basis, but for public works, public safety is another one. That's a huge expense this year with their updating a significant portion of their fleet on their cars. And it's something that they can do now. They've been waiting for the car prices to come down. If you noticed last year, the CIP, they didn't spend much, but I think the sheriff was being very shrewd and waiting for those costs to come down. And now you can buy them at a much more economical price. But you couldn't do that without a CIP.
And I think this is one of the things that Mr. Chairman, that I really appreciate about what's done in our finance planning is recognizing that there are capital expenditures that are needed and putting aside money so that we're able to do that instead of just like you do in your family operation, your family budget. You know you're going to need a new car in a few years, so you start putting money aside instead of just borrowing the money and winding up having to pay for the expense and the interest, so it saves us a lot of money right there. And I think that's reflected in that low figure we have of interest expense. And really, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that interest expense mainly for things like the bond issues that we've set aside that the people have voted on? So it's not that our daily operations are being borrowed for. It's for bond issues like the remodel of the detention center and whatnot.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, absolutely. And I'll just bring you to page 5. Thought about eliminating this line on this was the debt service line. It's 0 for the all-purpose fund. But I like that it's there, showing that we don't need to go out after debt for our general fund and our general operations. So that is a kind of a pat on our back there. So I left it there for this opportunity. So
Mr. Chair, I like to refer to this as the Dave Ramsey approach to government financing, and I really think that's admirable. I don't believe there are very many other local governments in the whole state of Montana that do as good a job as Lewis and Clark County.
oh, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner, very much.
And I did have another question on page 11, if you wouldn't mind. We've got on the we've got a reserves. Give me an example of the some of the all-purpose reserves there.
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, absolutely. So that is the all-purpose reserves is it's. Give me 1 second. 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 gotta be careful how I say it. So that's where we're expected to end the year after all of our operations have been spent down, if they are spent down at the level that we expect them to be. They typically aren't because we have vacancy savings and projects don't get going like we expect them to. But that from the general fund is where we're expected to land. And also, we want to hit a 25% mark so that we make sure that in the coming year, we were able to operate prior to, and not have to go into a negative cash balance prior to receiving our taxes, which we receive twice a year in November and May. So you can see, especially with the general fund, it'll start getting real low prior to, well, at the end of October. And people like me start looking at it and getting real nervous and going, how's this, how's this gonna work? And then sometime in November, accounting calls me up and says, hey, tax is posted, cash is back to normal. You can stop sweating. So that is only managed through these reserve balances. We can't make it to November without a healthy reserve, especially with the all-purpose fund. And from what I've seen from prior years and all of the other budgets that I've reviewed, we do it every year, and it's like clockwork. So something to be very proud of. As long as we're hitting that 25%, I think we're good to go.
It's kind of, if I might elaborate, it's kind of like a farmer or rancher who gets paid once or twice a year based on when he sells his crop. And in our case, property taxes come in twice a year in November and May. And so you have to have the cash flow to make that work.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, absolutely. It's a very seasonal cash flow for us. But maybe I'll get used to it. We'll see, but probably not. But I'm thinking that I'll always have a little bit of heartburn at the end of October. But it is something that we live with, all the counties live with, and it works.
Mm-hmm. And once we're on your page 12, you've estimated the cost for county operations, that there will be a slight increase for an average home. And I think I've been saying that the average home has a value of about $500,000. But if you can interpolate that to 600,000, you've been estimating that we were going to be at about $28 for county operations, that we'll be asking more this year than last year, and just maintaining what we've been doing with these other minor changes. So,
yep.
I thank you for that consistency. Thank you for giving us something that we can tell our taxpayers that we're doing. When the taxpayers look at the big bill, it's not going to be county operations. It's going to be raising their taxes. And we're going to try and do all the things that we've been doing and the things that are necessary to keep the government running here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Really appreciate the comments and questions. Commissioner Payne, anything at this time? Or
No,
you think we covered it?
Tom has expressed it way better than I could possibly.
Well, thank you. This is a public hearing, and so we will take public comment and public testimony on this. Any public comment? Any public comment? There is no public coming forward, but we may have more comments from staff. Mr. Baltz?
So, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I just thought I would add to talk a little bit about process, just to build on what you've already heard from Mr. Cornwell. So we do this every year. It's required by Montana state law, the process that we go through. So just a reminder, as Mr. Cornwell said, there will be an item on the agenda next week where you will be asked to pass a resolution to it involves the authorization for the budget, as was already mentioned. And then as a part of our budget process too, Mr. Cornwell and the whole finance team are putting together and updating something we do at the end of our fiscal year, which is our budget transfers and amendments, which we will inform you about. That will be coming. And then as we look ahead to September, that's when we would be bringing forward to you the agenda item where you approve the tax levies. It's a long list of tax levies that's associated with our budget. So I just wanted to remind you of those process things that will be coming your way as a part of the budget. And I also wanted to just make a couple of quick comments. And one would be that well, just to thank you to Mr. Cornwell and his whole team. Misty Edwards is very involved, all of our department directors, all of our elected officials. I know we've already gone through this, but I want to add my voice to thanking all of them. The budget process that we go through cannot be successful by accident. You know, it happens through the hard work that the whole team puts together, and I appreciate it. So, Commissioners, what we've tried to do, as you've heard from Mr. Cornwell, and we have done, is presented you with a responsible budget that is compliant with Montana state law, and it also reflects the priorities that you have established on behalf of our citizens. So looking ahead, you've heard as we've gone through our budget process some of the challenges that we're really trying to stay focused on. And as Mr. Cornwell has said, the challenges that really have our attention are the ones that we have no control over. And those would be things like our health plan. We don't, Commissioner Rolfe, you mentioned PILT, payment in lieu of taxes. We get those payments in every year, but they're not guaranteed. There's never been a year that I'm aware of that we've not gotten those, but again, they're not guaranteed. And also there's always out there, Commissioners, you know this very well. We always try to pay attention to this term called unfunded legislative mandates that may come our way that may create costs for our local government. So that there's nothing new about any of that, but those are just some of the issues that we continue to focus on in our county budget. And I think, Commissioners, that looking also at the challenges that we have as an organization, we've talked about this quite a bit too, that we want to stay focused on retention for our employees. Mr. Cornwell shared with you that 397 full-time employees once we implement this budget. Retention will continue to be something that we want to pay close attention to keep good qualified employees working for the organization on behalf of our citizens. And then the last thing that we haven't really discussed today is, Commissioners, this is something over the past few years we've really paid a lot of attention to, and that's the impact of our detention center operations and our continued focus on detention center diversion and trying to pay close attention to that. We do it every year, but I wanted to mention it as well too. If you'll remember, we renovated our detention center to increase it to 156 beds. We're seeing census counts, as you've heard from the sheriff's office, that are very close to that now. So what got me thinking about it was your comments about our desire to always think strategically, think ahead. And that's something we just need to continue to pay attention to. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Baltz. Really appreciate it. All right. Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, I think this is a good time to mention and congratulate our finance staff on receiving a national award again. 27 or 28 years in a row, this organization has received an award for excellence by an independent auditors that look over books of people, all counties and cities all over the country. I'll bet you there aren't a dozen other counties or small governments in the whole country that have had a run of 27 or 28 years in receiving that kind of award, and it's because of the staff that's here that are dedicated to the people of our county.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner. Absolutely. That certificate of achievement from the GFOA, or Government Finance Officers Association. What that is they review our annual report, and that is put together by our accounting team, Sherry Peets and Roger Nordahl. They work very, very hard on putting that report together. It is a very difficult, and there's a lot of challenges when it comes to new implementations from GASB or the government accounting standards board. They always seem to throw new challenges at our team, and it seems like they're not going to be, oh my gosh, we got a new thing to report on. We got to gather new data, and every year they do it, and it's gone on for 28 years, and I just find it very, very impressive, and from a commitment standpoint that. Boy, and from a consistency standpoint, we have to be one of the few that has a run that long. It's truly impressive. It was one of the first things I noticed when I came on last year. It was 26 years when I came on. It's like, wow, 26 years. That's impressive. And then now it's already up to 28, and there's a team that is really, really committed to the excellence of financial reporting. And it just goes to show that when you look at our annual report, it is a very trustworthy document. It's been audited by our auditors, and also has been audited by our reporting auditors, which is GFOA. And that is not a requirement. We're not required to do that. It is something that we choose to do that to show how excellent our staff is, and how much time and due diligence they do to achieve the reporting excellence that we want. And we want the citizens to be able to trust that document. It's big, it's cumbersome, but it's honest and it's true. And because of the hard work that team downstairs puts into it, Sherry and Roger and the accounting staff, Amy and all of them, it's a very impressive achievement to do this for 28 years. It's just incredible.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Roth. Anything else, Commissioner Ray? Okay, so we've had a few more comments, and just to open it up for the record, any more public comment, any other public comment? And there is no public in the room, so we'll close public comment. Commissioners, it'd be great to have a motion to approve the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2025 and set a date of July 18th for the scheduled consideration of the passing of the budget.
Mr. Chair, I am proud to move to approve this preliminary budget.
Moved and seconded to approve the preliminary budget as presented by Mr. Cornwell. Thank you very much, Mr. Cornwell. Any further discussion, Commissioner? And I just note that it is scheduled now for July 18th for the consideration of the formal passing of the budget. All right, Commissioners, without further comment, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Cornwell. Thank you, Mr. Baltz. All right. We are down to the last item on the agenda, which is any public comment that is under the jurisdiction of the commission, but not on today's agenda. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Seeing no public come forward, commissioners, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.